I don't know if Jim operates the same way, but if his wife has helpful suggestions for what Jim might want to do, maybe sometimes Jim doesn't accept her helpful suggestions. So you might not hear about the Tuesday morning Bible study, but just come and find out. How about that? What I do want to touch on is our theme that Julie mentioned, experiencing Jesus. And I'd like to invite you to think of that in terms of moving from a second-hand knowledge to a first-hand knowledge. Moving from second-hand to first-hand. So what do you think that's about? What does that look like? What does that feel like to move from second-hand to first-hand? An example, I think, is what Jeff, I almost called Jeff Jesus, what Jeff has said several times, I think, about the confirmation program and the youth programs and what his hope is for them, for the kids that attend those, is that during the course of their instruction and their time together, that they are able to move from something that began as their parents' faith and it becomes their own faith. I think that's a good example of second-hand moving to first-hand religion and first-hand faith. That this becomes something you take on for yourself and you commit your life to Jesus on your own, not because it's something, this is your parents' church and they say you have to go to church, but this becomes something of your own. So that's second-hand to first-hand. And as you consider that, think about the message of the Bible. Think about what the Bible's message is. Last week we finished up 4 weeks on the book of Revelation, which is at the end of the Bible, right? And Kim did a great job of kind of telling us about this whole book that is the Bible. And so today we heard Dwayne reading from the beginning of the Bible, literally, God's story of creation in Genesis. And so you can think of that, the end where we just were, in the beginning where we are this morning. In the beginning, God, in the end, God. And God is present throughout, active and present and working in and for the world. So think of the Bible's message as having to do with that. And then in the creation story that we had this morning, did you notice how many times that God said it was good? That each day God would create, and at the end of the day, God would look and see what was created, and he would say it was good. And so a question for us is, if God looked at our world today, if God looked at creation today, would God still say it is good? And I think clearly no, right? Hurricanes and floods and fires are what we've been focusing on the last week or two. And beyond that, we're always faced with divisions between us in this country, between different countries divided against each other. We have continually to hear about oppression and injustice. So God, I think, would look at our world, and as beautiful as it is, as much good as there is, I think we would agree that creation is not so good today. Now, thinking about the message of the Bible, that does not mean that the Bible is telling us to get better and to get with the program and to make it right. That's not the message of the Bible. Instead, if you think about Revelation where we ended and Genesis where we are today, in the beginning, Genesis says God created. And remember what Revelation said. It was about recreation. It was about God making all things new. It was about God's salvation. So as we think about the message of the Bible, this is a story of God's salvation, of God healing his creation, of God making all things new, making all things whole and good again, so that God can look out and say, it is good. And so that's the message of the Bible. And as we think about experiencing Jesus, it's about coming to understand and to know that personally, that is for you, that God's salvation, this story that we hear about in the Bible, that is for you personally. This is a gift to you. And to know that firsthand, not because somebody else has told you this is what you need to know, but that you know that and understand that. So that's what Rally Day is about. That's what Experience Jesus, our theme for the year, is about. Rally Day is bringing together our worship and our education. So 2 of our core values, we have 4 core values. 2 of them are to glorify in worship and to grow through instruction and education. So these come together, both worship and education, both glorifying and growing, come together to tell us that story so that we come to know God's story of salvation. And we come to receive that story as well in the water of baptism, in the bread and wine of communion, in hearing God's proclamation, I claim you, you are my child, you are mine. To come to know this story, to experience Jesus through that. So that's some of the ways that we experience Jesus. It's not something magical, it's hearing the story and placing ourselves in a position so that we can do that. Experiencing Jesus, again, is our theme, coming to know that firsthand, the story of God's salvation. So this is what we want to be about as a church, and then we want to be able to live out that knowing, that firsthand knowledge. And so I pray God's blessing on you for the year ahead, that you would come to know ever more deeply, ever more on a firsthand basis, this story of God's salvation, and know that it is for you. Amen.